The rain had soaked through his shoes, his jacket clung to his back, and the weight of the day pressed on his chest as he stood across the street from the glowing glass palace of luxury cars, watching a woman stumble out of the dealership doors with her head held high and her dignity barely intact, while he himself carried nothing but a tired heart, a hungry child waiting at home, and a kindness that the world had never rewarded him for. If you believe that kindness still matters in a hard world, take a moment right now to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to channel name, because stories like this remind us that second chances are real. He was a single father named Daniel, though most days he felt more like a survivor than a dad. Life had not broken him all at once, it had chipped away at him slowly, year by year. His wife had passed during childbirth, leaving him alone with a newborn and a mountain of grief. The military pension barely covered rent. Construction jobs came and went, and on bad weeks, he picked up night shifts cleaning offices downtown. His son, Noah, was 6 years old and believed his father could fix anything, even when Daniel could barely hold himself together. That belief was the only thing that kept him standing upright when exhaustion bent his spine and doubt whispered that he was failing. That afternoon, Daniel had walked past the dealership because he needed shelter from the rain, not because he belonged anywhere near those cars. The polished floors, the sharp suits, and the quiet arrogance of wealth had no place for a man whose bank balance hovered near zero. That was when he saw her. She was dressed simply, not poorly, but without the flashy confidence the salespeople seemed to require. Her posture was composed, but her eyes carried a familiar look, one Daniel recognized immediately. It was the look of someone being judged before being understood. When the doors opened and she stepped out quickly, brushing past a salesman who didn't bother hiding his smirk, Daniel felt a sting in his chest. He didn't know her story, but he knew rejection when he saw it. She stopped near the curb, visibly shaken, her hands clenched at her sides as rain began to fall harder. People walked past her like she was invisible. Daniel hesitated. He had learned long ago that stepping into someone else's trouble rarely ended well, especially when you had so little to spare. Yet something in him refused to move on. He offered her his umbrella, the cheap kind with bent metal ribs, and pointed to the bus stop where she could get out of the rain. It was a small thing, almost nothing, but her eyes softened in surprise. She nodded, accepting the gesture not with entitlement, but with gratitude that felt real. They sat on the bench in silence, rain hammering the pavement, the dealership's bright lights glowing behind them like a world neither of them belonged to at that moment. Daniel didn't ask questions. He never did. He knew how humiliating it felt to explain yourself to strangers. Instead, he shared his umbrella and his presence, two things he could offer without cost. She wiped her face discreetly and steadied her breathing. Slowly, the tension left her shoulders. When the bus arrived, she stood, thanked him sincerely, and handed the umbrella back. Daniel told her to keep it. He said he'd be fine. She hesitated, then took it, as if understanding that sometimes accepting kindness was as important as giving it. Daniel watched the bus disappear down the street and felt the familiar ache return. He had helped someone, but his own problems were still waiting. That night, he returned to the small apartment where Noah slept curled under a blanket that had once belonged to Daniel's mother. Dinner was rice and canned beans again. Noah didn't complain. He never did. Daniel tucked him in, kissed his forehead, and sat alone in the dark, wondering how long he could keep pretending everything was okay. Days passed. Work was scarce. The landlord left another notice under the door. Daniel felt the walls closing in. He considered selling the last valuable thing he owned, his old watch from his military days, but something stopped him. Maybe it was pride, or maybe it was hope stubbornly refusing to die. He kept going, one exhausting day at a time, carrying bricks, scrubbing floors, smiling for his son, and sleeping in short, restless stretches. Then one morning, as Daniel walked Noah to school, a low, smooth engine sound rolled into their quiet street. It wasn't loud or aggressive. It was refined, powerful, unmistakable. A sleek Rolls Royce glided to a stop near their building, its polished surface reflecting the cracked pavement and peeling paint around it. Daniel froze. Cars like that didn't belong here. Noah's eyes widened in wonder, his small hand tightening around his father's. The driver's door opened, and a woman stepped out. For a moment, Daniel didn't recognize her. Then their eyes met, and the memory clicked into place like a puzzle piece finding its home. It was the woman from the dealership. She looked different now, not because of her clothes or the car, but because she was smiling, a smile filled with warmth and certainty. She walked toward him, her heels clicking softly against the pavement, and Daniel felt an unfamiliar wave of anxiety. He hadn't done anything wrong, but years of struggle had taught him to expect the worst. She stopped in front of him and looked at Noah, then back at Daniel, her expression gentle and steady. She told him she had been searching for him for days. She explained that she owned the Rolls Royce dealership he had stood outside of, that she had gone there that day without announcing herself, wanting to see how customers were treated when they didn't look the part. What she experienced had angered her deeply, but what stayed with her was not the humiliation. It was the man who had offered her shelter without knowing who she was or what she could give him in return. Daniel felt his throat tighten. He hadn't helped her for recognition. He hadn't expected anything back. He had simply seen another human being in pain and responded the only way he knew how. She told him that kind of integrity was rare, and that it mattered. She explained that she believed people revealed their true character in moments when no one was watching, and his kindness in the rain had shown her exactly who he was. She asked about his life, his work, his son. Daniel answered honestly, not dramatizing his hardship but not hiding it either. He spoke about his wife, his struggles, his hopes for Noah. As he talked, he realized how rarely anyone had asked him these questions with genuine interest. She listened, really listened, without checking her phone or glancing away. When he finished, there was a brief silence that felt heavy with meaning. She told him she was offering him a job, not as charity but as opportunity. She needed someone trustworthy to manage community outreach and oversee training at her dealership, someone who understood respect, humility, and service. She said skills could be taught, but character could not. Daniel felt dizzy. It sounded unreal, like a dream he wasn't allowed to have. He hesitated, instinctively doubting his worth, but she reassured him that she had seen enough to believe in him. Life did not transform overnight, but it began to shift in ways Daniel had never imagined. He started the new job with nervous determination, learning systems, meeting people, and slowly finding his confidence. The environment was intimidating at first, but he carried the same quiet strength he had shown at the bus stop. Employees noticed. Customers felt it. The culture began to change, subtle at first, then unmistakably. Respect replaced judgment. Listening replaced assumptions. Daniel wasn't just working, he was building something meaningful. At home, things changed too. The fridge was no longer empty. Noah had new school supplies, new shoes, and stories to tell about his dad's job that made him beam with pride. Daniel slept better, laughed more, and allowed himself to imagine a future that wasn't defined by survival alone. He never forgot where he came from, and he never stopped noticing people who were struggling quietly, the way he once had. One evening, months later, Daniel stood outside the dealership again, this time in clean clothes, watching as a nervous customer walked in, unsure and hesitant. Daniel stepped forward, greeting them with warmth and respect, making sure they felt seen. Across the showroom, the woman who had changed his life watched silently, a small smile on her face, knowing that her test had revealed not just the flaws in her business but the extraordinary potential of one man's kindness. If this story is touching your heart right now, please pause for a moment and show your support by liking this video, sharing it, and subscribing to channel name, because your engagement helps stories of hope reach people who need them most. Daniel never owned a Rolls Royce, and he never wanted one. What he gained was far more valuable. He gained dignity, stability, and the chance to be the father he had always wanted to be. He learned that kindness was never wasted, even when it seemed invisible, even when the world felt unfair. And the woman learned that true wealth had nothing to do with money, but everything to do with how we treat people when we think it doesn't matter. Before this story ends, please leave a comment below telling us where you're watching from or sharing a moment when kindness changed your life, because your words might inspire someone who feels alone right now. As the Rolls Royce continued to glide through the city streets, and Daniel walked hand in hand with his son toward a brighter future, the rain-soaked moment outside the dealership became a quiet reminder that sometimes, the smallest acts of compassion return in ways we could never imagine, finding us not when we are looking for miracles but when we are simply trying to be human.